If you wish to study Exhibit 3, please pause the video at this time to have a look at it. Dimensions in between. Now that we have postulated the legitimacy of the assertion that the energy forms which compose consciousness can move beyond the time-space dimension, we need to turn our attention to the energy forms which inhabit those dimensions between time, space, and the absolute. In doing so, we may better perceive the form that reality assumes when we encounter it in those intermediate dimensions. In this context, Bentov tells us that the causal relationship between events breaks down, movement becomes jerky rather than smooth, time and space may become grainy or chunky. Perhaps a piece of space can be traversed by a particle of matter in any direction, without necessarily being synchronized with a piece of time. In short, a pair of events will occur in either time or space, the pair not being connected causally, but by random fluctuation. What Bentov means is that inside the dimension of time-space, where both concepts apply in a generally uniform way, there is a proportional relationship between them. A certain space can be covered by energy moving in either particle or wave form in a certain time, assuming a specific velocity virtually anywhere in the time-space universe. The relationship is neat and predictable. However, in the intermediate dimensions beyond time-space, the limitations imposed on energy to put into a space of oscillating motion are not uniform, as they are in our physical universe. A myriad of various distortions and incongruities are thus likely to be encountered, such that our nice, neat assumptions concerning the relationship between time and space as we know it in this dimension do not apply. But even more important, access is open to both the past and the future when the dimension of current time-space is left behind. Special status, out-of-body experience. Although human consciousness can, with enough practice, move beyond the dimension of time-space and interface with other energy systems in other dimensions, the entire process is appreciably enhanced if that consciousness can be detached in a large measure from the physical body before such interface is attempted. Once an individual becomes proficient in the technique of out-of-body movement and then reaches the point where he is able to break out of time-space while out of his body, he gains the advantage of clicking out part of his enhanced consciousness while starting from a base location much closer to the dimensions with which he wishes to communicate. In other words, since he is starting from a point much higher up, to use an analogy from the time-space context, that part of his consciousness involved in the clicking out will have that much more time to interact with the dimensions beyond time-space, because less time is required to traverse the intervening layers. Moreover, once the individual is able to project his consciousness beyond time-space, that consciousness would logically tend to entrain its frequency output with the new energy environment to which it is exposed, therein greatly enhancing the extent to which the individual's altered consciousness may further modified to achieve a heightened point of focus and much refined oscillation pattern. As a result, a self-reinforcing process should ensure whereby the further consciousness's out-of-the-body state can be projected beyond the time-space dimension, the more its level of energy output would be enhanced, thus promoting the potential for still further travel. The tentative conclusion to be drawn is that the out-of-body state may be regarded as an extremely effective way of accelerating the process of enhancing consciousness and interfacing with the dimensions beyond time-space. If the practitioner of gateway techniques has a chance of concentrating on achieving and exploiting the out-of-body experience as opposed to concentrating on his full efforts on expanding his consciousness exclusively from the physical base, the former would appear to promote much faster and much more impressive success than does the latter. Absolute in perspective. It may be helpful at this point to pause and recap the major aspects of our intellectual journey from time-space to the realm of the absolute. We have spoken at some length concerning the incredibly complex hologram, which is created by the intersection of energy patterns generated by the totality of all dimensions of the universe, time-space included. We have noted that our minds constitute energy fields which interact with various aspects of this hologram to deduce information which is ultimately processed through the left hemisphere of our brains to reduce it to a form that we employ for the process we call thinking. We have implied that this hologram is the finite embodiment in active energy form of the infinite consciousness of the Absolute. It is the title we assigned to that vast pool of energy in a state of perfect rest over which the physical universe is layered, and from whence it comes. Incidentally, to describe this, Ventov uses the analogy of a very deep sea, comparing the still depths of the sea to the dimension of the Absolute, while assigning the storm-tossed waves above to represent the physical universe with which we are familiar. The slightly agitated currents of the sea to be found in between the turbulent surface and the totally still depths represent energy in the process of either going into rest, i.e. approaching infinity, or coming out of rest. From Big Bang to Torus. Working from the widely accepted Big Bang theory, Ventov presents a conceptual model to depict the process of time-space evolution, the relative proposition of the universal hologram. That hologram is often called a torus because it is thought to have the overall shape of an immense, self-contained spiral. Basing his thesis on recent studies concerning the distribution of quasars, quasi-stellar objects, and operating on the premise that the universe's smaller processes tend to mirror images of larger ones, i.e. the pattern of electrons around the nucleus of an atom mirrors the way planets orbit their suns, and so on. Ventov postulates the following scenario. Taking his cue from the observed capability of quasars to eject enormously concentrated beams of matter from their interiors in controlled, non-concentric versions of the Big Bang, he envisions a similar process occurring in the generation of the universe. See Exhibit 4 coming up. Noting that these galaxies located to the north of our own galaxy are moving further away than those located to the south, and those to the east and west are demonstrably more distant. Ventov regards this as subjective evidence that the jet of matter which expanded into our universe has turned back upon itself, eventually forming an ovoid or an egg shape. He sees matter in our universe entering the ovoid pattern following the ejection from a nucleus composed of extremely compressed energy through a white hole. At the end of its trip at the far end of the ovoid, he sees it departing via a black hole. In such model, time is observed to be a measure of the change which occurs as energy evolves into new complex forms as it's processed along the distance from white hole side of the nucleus around the shell of its cosmic egg until it enters the black hole. In other words, energy expelled from infinity and confined within limits by the consciousness of the Absolute achieves form and motion following ejection from the white hole at the top of the egg. Time begins as a measure of the cadence of this evolutionary movement as reality goes around the shell of the egg on its journey to the black hole at the far end. Here is the exhibit referenced. I'd recommend pausing the video at this time to study the exhibit. Our place in time. The observed distribution of galaxies suggests that our particular universe is located near the top of the egg at the point where matter begins to fall back in on itself, thus explaining the reason why the galaxies to the north are seen to be moving away more rapidly as they are caught up in the downturn of the stream of matter towards the far end of the cosmic egg. Layered over this cosmic egg is the Absolute, which sustains the radiating nucleus from which the original jet of matter issued forth. As the stream of matter moves around the ovoid towards its destination at the black hole, where it will be reabsorbed into the radiating nucleus and then the Absolute. It generates the interference pattern within the cosmic egg which constitutes the universal hologram or torus. Since the torus is being simultaneously generated by matter in all of the various phases of time, it reflects the development of the universe in the past, present, and future, as it would be seen from our particular perspective in one phase of time. By reflecting on this model, it becomes possible to see how human consciousness brought to a sufficiently altered or focused state could obtain information concerning the past, present, and future, since they all exist in the universal hologram simultaneously. In the case of the future, because all of the consequences of the past and present can be seen coming together in the hologram, such that the future can be predicted or seen with total accuracy. Moreover, it is possible to see how the implosion of energy patterns would cross and recess to create an incredibly complex four-dimensional hologram or torus in the spiral shape in reflection of the multidimensional developing pattern of evolution. All of the movements of the energies which comprise the universe leave their mark and hence tell their story throughout time.